Wrath, another one of the 7 deadly sins, is defined as uncontrolled feelings of anger, rage, and even hatred. As James 1:19 through 20 reads, "Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, for human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness." But today we'll be discussing the sin of wrath and how it can ruin an athlete's performance and publicly demonize their character. Today we're going to talk about the story of Noah Lyles, Kenny Bednarek, and the 200-meter dash at USA's. Before getting into the USA performances, we're going to lay down a little bit of background information. So Noah has basically been injured this whole season. He had to skip the Atlanta games. I remember hearing about that. And he's just now getting back into peak shape for Tokyo. He said in his interview at USA's that he's pretty much running every race, just trying to get as many quality reps in as he can, leading up to get ready for Worlds in September. Now, while Noah has kind of had like a little bit of a rocky start to his season, Kenny has had exactly the opposite, as he's been undefeated his whole season before USA's, running a notable 1983 in the 200 at Grand Slam Miami. He was undefeated all year until he lined up against Noah in the 200 at USA's, where the top 3 finishers move on to Tokyo to run on the World Championship team, right? In the 2, they both ran respectable races, with Noah finishing at a impressive 1963 and Kenny following with a 1967. Noah closed in on the finish line. He stared Kenny down, even through the line, kind of coming off the curve, still staring at him, heading into the finish, right? And that's when Kenny shoved him and the two of them started to argue. The tension carried into the post-race interview as well as their own individual interviews. And while Noah was told by his coach not to comment on the situation, Kenny in his own interview had his own words to say, saying that basically like, okay, you can stare me down, that's fine, but you know, when we line up and we're both fresh, I'm gonna get you, is basically what he was saying. So right off the bat, I'm not really defending anything, I don't have a side in it, but just off the bat, it's sort of a known thing in the track world that Noah Lyles is a showboat. He's a show-off, very loud personality, very prideful athlete, and he acknowledges these things as like saying that, quote, Noah's gonna be Noah. Because of this, he usually ends up being the villain in people's stories of like how the so-and-so versus so-and-so. Kenny's perception is kind of the opposite of how people perceive him in the public. He usually keeps to himself, comes off as more sportsmanlike. So when he put his hands on Noah, it felt more just like out of character, and it kind of changed the way people viewed him for a little bit. Now, as Robert Greene once put in The Law of Human Nature, when you see someone do something negative and or out of character, it may actually be closer to their truer self. Now, I'm not saying a little beef or rivalry is bad, because honestly, that's low-key like what fuels athletics most of the time. But a perfect example of the way this was used perfectly is Kaylin Clark versus Angel Reese, where the beef was strictly verbal and they both used that to their advantage. Rivalries make things exciting, and honestly, that's what we need in the world of track and field right now. But for me, words are words, but the second that something becomes physical is the second that it should stop. And I'm not saying that either of these men are like bad people or trying to tear them down in any way. If anything, I'm just using them as an example of how sin can corrupt good people and make them do things that they might not be proud of later. Wrath can look like strength in a moment where you kind of like stand your ground and defend your ego, you know, but in reality, it's weakness. It shows a lack of self-control. Instead of keeping you sharp, it kind of clouds your judgment. And instead of discipline, it creates impulse. You end up neglecting the discipline you need to be built into a good athlete. So for example, like your coach didn't play you because you kept fouling out and yelling at refs and stuff. Your friends don't like you because you're always crashing out, or you're always like yelling at somebody. Or like, in other words, you didn't get an opportunity because you can't control your emotions and you're ultimately a slave to yourself and your moods. Years of hard work can get like overshadowed by one shove, one fight, or one outburst, you know, one arrest. Fans don't remember the time that you ran fast, but the drama that came at the finish line. At the end of the day, wrath binds you to your opponent when the real battle has always been against you and against yourself and trying to control that emotion. The reality that despite the fact that Noah was faster than him that day, The moment that he acted out of emotion and showed that what he did, that loss affected him, was the moment that Noah got 2 wins that day. How to defeat wrath. The antidote to wrath is always going to be temperance and self-control. In sports, talent and training matter, of course, but the ability to master your emotions under pressure, when your character is under fire, is what separates champions from regular people. Wrath is easy. Anybody can crash out, can yell, can stand their ground, but defeating wrath and putting your pride aside, that's strength. It shows to be that's what it means to be a real man, to be a good athlete. It means choosing discipline over impulse. It means letting your performance and where you know you're at in your fitness speak instead of your anger, and because your anger just kind of shows uncertainty. It shows that, man, I don't know if I had this, because if he knew it and he didn't have any doubt within himself, he wouldn't have felt the need to do that. Rivalries can still exist, and in fact, they push athletes to higher levels, but they must never cross the line of hatred or physical retaliation, especially not in the sport of running.